Hey everybody, welcome to Monday Marriage Moment. And if it wasn't already, today's message is brought to us by the letter M, right? Because we are going to learn to maximize the minutes that matter most.
Cool.
You like that? So we are looking at this book by Les and Leslie Parrott, who are marriage experts. This book is called Your Time-Starved Marriage. Highly recommend this book. It is specifically written towards couples who want to have a healthy, happy, satisfied marriage, but who are, like most of us, just swamped with busyness, have a busy schedule, have families and jobs and careers and activities and hobbies and all those things. How do you make your marriage a priority in a life full of busyness? And so today we're going to look at what we said earlier, just how to maximize the little moments in your day, the minutes in your day, so that the busyness doesn't crowd out your marriage. So where do you want to start?
Well, they start with saying that every time they have a couple come in that's maybe going through a really hard time and coming for marital counseling, they ask one question, their first question.
When was the last time you had a date night? Just
Yeah.
the two of you.
And they said almost always when a couple is going through a really tough time, the answer to that question is it's been a really long time. And they give all the excuses of why, all the scheduling things. They have 3 kids, they have all these hobbies that they do, and not to mention their jobs that they both have. And so they start there and say,
It's interesting, and it's important to recognize that when a couple comes to them for counseling, when these people meet a couple who's struggling in marriage, the first question they ask is, when was the last time you spent time together intentionally just for the two of you? That speaks volumes to me.
yeah.
That these marriage experts, that's the first question they ask.
Yeah.
So they wrote this chapter to just give us some tools, some ideas, some things to think about.
Yeah, and so as they talked about that at the very beginning, they said, if you're not really intentional about making sure you're having time together, then busyness just consumes you.
Mm-hmm.
It consumes your life. Your schedules become really packed, especially if you have kids and you're raising a family. And then it just automatically happens that your marriage takes a back seat.
Yeah, and that's a scary thing when, without thinking about it, you put your marriage on the back burner or in the back seat, because before you know it, your marriage isn't happy, it's not satisfying,
Yeah.
it's not fulfilling, and it's probably not going to last.
Right.
And one of the things we base this whole marriage moment concept on is that your marriage is your most important possession. It's the most important thing you have. It's more important than your career. It's more important than your hobbies, than anything in your life other than your relationship with God. If you're married, your marriage is your number one thing.
Yeah.
And so you can never allow it to take a back seat to just the busyness of life. You have to work really hard to make sure it doesn't.
Yeah, and I think this is where when a couple is ready to divorce, they say they've just drifted apart.
Mm-hmm. We're not in love anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We've fallen out of love.
Yeah. So the concept of this chapter is basically saying that marriage is a series of moments, these little points in time that they all accumulate over time and make a really big difference. But
Right.
they're everyday moments.
Everyday moments, not big things. In fact, the whole purpose of this chapter is to say there's probably some time in your day already that if you can learn to recognize it, then you can maximize it. They're not asking you to schedule anything else. They're not asking you to
Right.
put one more thing on your calendar. They're just saying, if you're wise, you can recognize these little moments in your day when you have an opportunity to maximize them, and by doing so, make your marriage better.
Yeah. And so I think it's good to just mention this one thing that they said, that marriage is really not about waiting for these big events. And I think there are some couples, I can see how sometimes I had this mindset when we were raising the kids, that after the kids were gone, then we're going to have so much time for our marriage. We can take trips, we can spend time together. And so maybe I was cutting corners a little bit on our schedule while the kids were still here because it was so busy.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having that mindset of waiting for big moments, big events, when we do that, we pass right over these in-between moments that are really important.
It's really true. We miss those
Yeah.
mundane moments.
Yeah, so we're going to go over the mundane moments.
The mundane moments that you can maximize.
So it wants us to really think about being present. That's one of the biggest gifts we can give our spouse, is to be present in the moment.
In the moment.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
Well, I think we're going to give some examples of those.
Okay.
So, for example, saying hello. Like when you come home from work and I'm coming home from work, we've tried to make it a really strong habit that we greet each other.
Probably not something most people think about, but that's a moment in your day when you get home from work, whatever it is, whenever your schedules happen to cross, where you see each other for the first time. That is a moment that you can maximize, or it's a moment you can waste.
Yeah.
And by maximize it, what we're saying is take that moment. It could be 5 seconds, it could be a minute, maybe 2 minutes, but do more than say, "Hey, how you doing?" Or "Oh, you forgot to take the trash out,"
Yeah.
or "Did you get the kids?" That's not maximizing your moment. But saying hello is, "Hey, I missed you. Hello, how was your day?" Kiss each other when you walk in. Give your spouse a hug. It doesn't take much, but if you can establish that as a routine, you've made a moment. You've created a moment.
Yeah, it's big. So in the same way, saying goodbye when we're leaving for the day for work, or if we're somebody's going on a trip or something. I think it's really important to have a routine for when you're saying goodbye.
And it's the same thing. Don't use that moment to say, "Hey, don't forget you have this, and did you bring your thing, and hey, don't forget about our schedule." That's not maximizing your moment.
Yeah.
Use that time, the 30 seconds you have, to say goodbye.
You recently.
Man, I messed this up. I knew we were going to talk about this. For years, every time we say goodbye, no matter how many times we say goodbye during the day, I come over and I kiss you on the face. Right? That's just what we do. Goodbye, I love you, see you later.
Yeah.
And the other day, we had the kids here and the grandkid was here, and I just walked out, went to work, didn't say bye to anybody. I was not mindful. I missed that moment, and you texted me and said, "You didn't say goodbye. Love you." I missed that moment.
And you turned your truck around and came all the way back home.
I did.
Came in the house and gave me a kiss.
I did.
And went back to
Because
work.
that's important. Those are important moments.
That made me feel
Didn't
really
want
good.
to miss one.
Yeah. So,
Even
hello.
though I did, even though I messed it up.
Well, and I mean, that just happens sometimes, but it struck me when that happens, we made that such a routine that I really missed that when you didn't do it. So, all right, so hello and goodbye when you go to sleep.
There's some moments right there. Even if, a lot of couples don't go to bed at the same time, don't go to sleep at the same time.
Yeah.
It's something you should probably consider, going to sleep at the same time, going to bed at the same time.
Yeah.
It eliminates a whole lot of temptation. It syncs up your schedules. Those are some things to think about. But you have a minute there before you fall asleep to just maximize your moment. Say goodnight. Say I love you.
Have a routine. of
Have a
some
routine.
type. And it talked about that, like if one person is a true night owl and they stay up really late, maybe reading or working or whatever, that even if you do have that habit, that you would still, when the spouse is going to bed, go ahead and go and spend some time visiting and talking, or just cuddling or whatever your routine would be, and then go
Right.
do your work or read or whatever you're going to do, even if you don't go to bed at the same exact time.
Yep.
So that's good. When one of you has a tough day,
When you're aware your spouse has a tough day, you have an opportunity to really improve your marriage by speaking into that harsh day that they have.
Yeah.
Being encouraging, being loving, being gracious, not being critical, judgmental,
right?
or distracted by your own schedule.
Yeah, and I think that one's a big one on just being present, really being present and not trying to fix whatever it is that happened if that's not what your spouse needs, but just being in tune with what they need. So I remember when the kids were all home, and if I had a tough day, I told you finally that I needed you sometimes to put your arm around me and tell me, you're going to be okay. It's okay. You weren't trying to fix all the stuff, but just that hug and reassurance from you was what I needed to hear sometimes. So maybe you need to figure out what your spouse needs when it's a tough day.
That's good.
So, all right. And then it talked about just routines. we're in an empty nest, and we have a really habitual routine. I think we've kind of settled into this routine because there's not a whole lot of different things going on.
Right.
We have kind of the same schedule all the time, and I think sometimes some people might think that that's bad, that it's not exciting, but I like routine, and it's kind of comforting to me.
Right.
And so the things that we do that are our routine, I don't think that's bad, and I think it's actually little moments that are adding up over a long period of time.
Right. They're like all the little tiny bricks in a beautiful brick house.
Yeah.
They get laid one at a time, and those routines are what kind of establish the strength and the foundation and just the solidity of your marriage.
Yeah.
All those routines.
And I've noticed even when you go on a trip, you're gone on a mission trip or whatever, and if I stay here, we have those routines so ingrained that you usually check on me in the morning by phone, or we call or something, and we talk in the evening too, because we have those routines
Right.
so set. And so I think it's just saying it's really important. It's important to do those little moments in your routine. It's not an unexciting thing. It's very mundane, but really
Doesn't
important.
have to. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So the last little part was talking about making a moment last. So it talked right there. I don't know if you want to talk about this part of that. Most people don't lead their life; they just accept what
They just
happens.
feel like, here's my schedule. It is what it is. I'm going to accept it and try to make the best of it. That's accepting your life, which is okay. But a better way to live is to lead your life. You be the one who decides the direction your life takes. Where you spend your time, where you spend your money, where you spend your emotional energy. You choose that instead of letting life choose it for you.
Yeah. And it makes me think of, I've always had this picture in my mind about a marriage, because we've talked about how marriage is work.
Mm-hmm.
It requires work. And if we don't do the work, it's like both of us being in a canoe on water. And if we're not rowing and doing a little bit of work, it's not rowing the whole time, but a little bit of rowing to keep ourselves in the right direction and staying together.
Right.
When we don't do that work, we automatically drift apart.
Right.
And so I just thought about that when I was reading this chapter, that it does take this little bit of work. It's not hard work, these little moment things, but just being mindful of being present in these moments. That it's really important.
And I want to close by talking about that concept of being present, being in the moment. That is something, it's kind of a popular phrase now, to be present, to be in the moment. And it's an important thing to know that is a skill that everybody can learn. That is not a gift that some people have and some people don't. Every human being can learn to be in a moment, to be focused emotionally in a moment on what's happening in that moment. And I would say in our world today, the best way you can train yourself to be in a moment is to turn crap off. So many of us are so distracted by our screens, by the things that are in front of us, that we give up so many of these moments we're talking about because we're more concerned about who did what on the internet. And one of the ways you can teach yourself to be in a moment is specifically in marriage. If you're doing something together, whether it's a date night or having a conversation or doing the hello goodbye or any of these things we've talked about, one of the best things you can do is just take your phone, turn it upside down, and not look at it for that duration of time, whatever it is. 30 seconds, don't look at your phone. 5 minutes, don't look at your phone. Going on a date, don't look at your phone. Yeah. It really does make a difference.
It really does.
When your focus is all over everything else, it's really hard to direct it at what's important.
And they talked about in here, and it made me remember something that we talked about in a previous one of these about time, that we need to really work hard to stop rushing, to just stop all the rushing of getting here and there. And remember, there was a quote of a mentor that talked to one of the authors, and he said, what's the key to this great marriage that you've had? And he said, you need to get the rushing out of your life.
Eliminate the hurry.
And that was the key. And I can say just for me, I think that's really true for my life, to just get it out. And it's the same, all the things we're doing and looking at and not being present with each other.
Yeah. Well, that's the thought for today, and not asking anybody to schedule something new into their life, because we all have enough on our schedule, but let us all be wise enough to recognize that we have time in our day, even if it's just a brief moment. If we can learn to maximize those moments, we can begin to build or continue to build on a strong, healthy, satisfying marriage. And that's what we want for you. I know that's what God wants for you. And so if there's anything we can do to help you, please feel free to comment or to email us or call us. We would love to hear your feedback and to help in any way we can. We're about halfway through this book, and then we have a bunch of questions that we're going to answer. We're going to take next week off because we won't have any screens. We'll be in the mountains. But we'll be back towards the end of July and be back with this eliminating busyness from your marriage talk. In the meantime, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. We love you guys. Have a great evening.